Well, hello everybody, it's Sean and I'm back. This time I want to take a look at my Atari 2600 game collection. In this box, it's been a number of years since I've looked at this, and in anticipation of receiving my new Atari 2600 Plus, I thought we would take a look at some of the games I've got and maybe take a look at the games I would like to run first on the Atari 2600 Plus. I am Sean, and this is Locke, and you're watching 300 Baud. So with that, why don't we get started? So as you have seen in some of my previous videos, I do have a few box 2600 games. These are in pretty rough shape. But I also have this box of loose cartridges. In addition to that, I have these user manuals that I've collected through the years. Some of these are from games that I purchased. Other ones are from eBay lots that I bought a couple of decades ago. If I saw like 10 or 20 game manuals for really cheap on eBay, I'd buy them. So they're probably pretty rare. Some of these are not for the 2600, but a good selection are. So why don't we go ahead and take a peek at what we've got in the box. There's quite a few of them in here. All right. So right from the start, we can see I've got a pretty decent selection of Atari 7800 games. I believe I have about 22 of them in here. I just looked at just the top of this just yesterday and was surprised at how many 7800 games I've got. I thought I had like 7 or 8. Turns out I've got over 20. What's really nice about having this collection of 7800 games is that the 2600 Plus is supposed to be able to play these games. So when that arrives, hopefully in November of this year, that I get a chance to test them and I can let you guys know what I find. And then I have a ton of 2600 games. Some of them really surprised me just looking at the top, like Word Zapper. I don't remember buying Word Zapper, but I've got Word Zapper. Amadar, that's a really cool game. Porky's, I don't remember buying Porky's, but I've got that. These are kind of cool. I think these are Data Age. Yeah, Data Age games. Now the labels have not fared very well over time, but it's really cool to have them. Of course, I've got a lot of the Activision games, Robo Tank here, and a collection of the Coleco games as well. And of course, Parker Brothers. Those three alone were just excellent publishers for the 2600. They just did an amazing job with them. This is a cool one. I didn't even know I had this, Squeeze Box by US Games. So US Games, they came out kind of the tail end of Atari. The quality of their games weren't really all that great. Although this one here, this is an interesting one. This is by Sega, called TechScan. I believe this one is a paddle game. Yep, use with paddles. This is a cool game. So we'll definitely take a look at that one. More Parker Brothers, more Activision, Coleco. Here's an Epix game, which is pretty cool. Now Epix, I believe, purchased Activision. No, actually, got that wrong. Activision purchased Epix. And let's see if the cartridges look the same. From what I can tell, they are a match. So as you can tell, the Activision cartridge and the Epix cartridge are the same. And I believe it's because Epix was purchased by Activision and they just merged their games. So yeah, it's kind of cool. California games. Here we've got an M Network game, Tron Deadly Disc. I've got this for the Intellivision, not as good. Of course, we've got Pitfall 1 and Pitfall 2. Great games. MASH. This is CBS. No, excuse me, 20th Century Fox made this game. So very interesting. Here's another one that's interesting. Deadly Duck. Uses a left joystick controller. I don't know if I've ever played Deadly Duck. And here I've got the Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. So that's just a look at the top of my box and what I've got here. I think what I want to do is I'm going to pull them out and kind of sort them out by groups and categories. And we'll take a look at maybe like games by different publishers and see what I've got. So here are all my Atari 2600 games. made by Atari. So these are all Atari releases. Now, I did find that Championship Soccer is not tested on the new 2600 Plus, and Stargate is not tested on the 2600 Plus. Now, Stargate's kind of interesting. I'll go through the case design on these here in a second. So here's several of the early Atari VCS games, Video Computer System, if that's what that stands for. And you'll notice these have just the text only and no image, no picture. So in the early 80s, around 1982 or so, Atari started to get a little bit fancier with the game cartridges. You'll notice they include the cover art from the box onto the cartridge itself. And they also don't include the frame that's around the font that you find on the older games. It's just the text, just the font itself, so like Pac-Man. Another thing is the older games, they have a slightly different shape font. So you'll notice the E here is slanted on this Championship Soccer, but on some of my other games here, you'll notice that the E is straight with the font. So there's a little bit of change here. With the older games, you have a lowercase font, where with the newer games, they're uppercase. So all of these original games are supposed to work, and all of these games here are supposed to work. And these are really nice. You know, they got the nice color image on there. Really adds a lot to the game. I mean, when you look at the graphics of, say, Golf, but then you look at the image, the artwork is just so nice, especially compared to the Atari graphics. So all those work. And then we've got these games here. These came out around 1983 and ran to about 1984, maybe up to 1985. And these are the silver label games. And they started packaging them in silver boxes. And I just think these are just absolutely beautiful cartridges. I really like the look of these things. I've got several of these style games. There's Kangaroo. Now, one thing about the Atari games, if you're not careful, you can actually punch through the labels. They've got some holes in them. Most of my games are not punched through, but some of them are. I got a lot of these games secondhand, so they get rough. They get roughed up. They're played with. But that's okay. And again, all these games work. Now, Stargate is an interesting one. So this one has 1987 Atari Corp. So this is the Jack Tramiel era of Atari. It's kind of a silver label, not quite. It's interesting because it kind of looks like this group here. Now that's possibly because it was like a reprint from the Warner Communications days to the Jack Tramiel days, but it's a little bit different. And this game is listed by Atari as untested, which I'm kind of surprised because I would think that Stargate would have been a rather popular game, very similar to Defender, but I think it's just slightly upgraded, maybe a little bit more difficult to play. But all of these red label games, things started to get a little bit cheaper in those days, but all of these games work. Now, one thing I do find interesting is like Mario Brothers. They've got Mario Brothers. Actually, I'm thinking Donkey Kong Jr. Here's Donkey Kong Jr. This game is actually originally published by ColecoVision. So I have this as a Coleco game, and I also have this as the Atari published game. So I think that's kind of interesting that Atari Corporation, they must have bought the rights to be able to produce this game. I'm not sure if Atari were the original ones to produce Mario Brothers. I would imagine so. Not sure about that. But these all work as well. Except Stargate. Stargate, untested. So we'll see. We'll see what happens to Stargate. Now here's my collection of Activision games. Now, all the Activision games that I have work and are tested, except these two. So we've got Robot Tank. Now I believe Robot Tank is not compatible with the Atari 7800, so it's not entirely surprising to me that it wouldn't be compatible with the Atari 2600 Plus. This is a great game, by the way, and similar to, say, Atari's Battlezone, which, believe it or not, I don't have Battlezone. That's kind of surprising. That's a good game, but Robot Tank is a great game too. And of course, Pitfall 2. This is a wonderful game. It'd be a real shame if the 2600 Plus can't play Pitfall 2, but it's currently listed as untested. That kind of tells me that it probably doesn't work, but we'll find out. Let's see here. Oh, and this is, these are all my M Network games. Now these kind of look like a Intellivision game with this little adapter put on the back. When I was a kid, I was always thinking, can you pop this off and put it in a television and play the better version of the game? No, you can't. It's an Atari 2600 game. So I got Armor Ambush, Space Attack, Tron Deadly Disc, and Astro Blast. So I have 4 of their games. These are, I never liked this cartridge because, you know, they don't stack nicely. They're just kind of, ugh. But the games are halfway decent. And one thing that really surprised me is I only got 4 Coleco games. And I think Coleco games were actually pretty decent for the 2600. People are very disappointed with Donkey Kong. It only has 2 levels. It's not terrible in my opinion, but it's also kind of a short game. Donkey Kong Jr., again, I don't think that's a terrible game either. Game mechanics are there. The graphics are not, but it's an Atari 2600. Venture is pretty good, and Smurf is actually very impressive graphically for the 2600. These are my Parker Brother games. Now, I really like the Parker Brother games. I think they did a really nice job. These on the top, these are all listed as untested. So I have Tuckenham, or however you say that, Popeye, Star Wars the arcade game, and James Bond 007. Now, James Bond, I haven't really played with this game, but it's probably not very good. The Star Wars arcade game just doesn't capture the gameplay of the original arcade. Popeye is actually pretty decent. Graphics are a little crude, but it actually plays decent. That's the thing I got to give him credit for. Q*bert, Reactor, Empire Strikes Back, Frogger, and Amador. That'll be pretty decent games. So I do like that collection of Parker Brother games. We'll have to see what happens with these 4 here. Chances are by the time I get my Atari in November, hopefully that's this year, then they'll have tested these games and they'll work. And then I've got my Imagic games. I've always been a huge fan of Imagic. I just think they're fantastic. Activision gets most of the excitement from the Atari crowd, but I really like Imagic games. Demon Attack is fantastic. Now, some of my games don't have the picture on the front, and some of them have a picture. So here's Atlantis with a nice picture. I also really like the chrome that they got going on here. The boxes were chrome, and the cartridges are chromed. Yeah, I've got Firefighter and Dragonfire. Dragonfire is just an awesome game. And Cosmic Arc is just fantastic. What's kind of interesting here with their games, so we got Riddle the Sphinx at the bottom. Let's see which ones. So I got Star Voyager. Here we go. So these are kind of continuations. So when you're playing, let's see, I believe it's Atlantis. This is the first game that came out. When you play Atlantis and all your city gets blown up, at the very end, a little spaceship takes off and disappears. Then you play Cosmic Arc. And I can't help notice, but the little spaceship that takes off from here sure does look a lot like the Cosmic Arc. So it's almost like Cosmic Arc is a second part of Atlantis. But great games. I really, really like these games. They're very good. Now, over here, I've got a couple of, let's see, Sega games, Congo Bongo, and TaxScan. These are tested, and they are supposed to work. And I've got 3 Data Age games, Encounter L5, Bermuda Triangle, and Warp Lock. These are all tested and work. This one surprised me. These are VidTech games. Don't know why I have these or how I got them, but I've got them. So I've got Sneak and Peek, Space Jockey, and Word Zapper. Now this one over here, this is US games. And Gopher does not work. Out of all the games I've got, Gopher is the one that doesn't work. I don't even know what Gopher plays like. But that's where, like a Flashback 9 or Flashback 10 with the added ROMs, you can play these games. Or even like the Retron 77 through ROM dump, you can also do it as well. Squeezebox works. And these are kind of an oddball collections here. These are not tested. So Tomcat is not tested, and skateboarding is not tested. And but these down here, these other Absolute and one Epic's game, these are all tested and work. So these two I'll have to test. Can't help notice, but the cartridges on these Absolute games and the Epic's games fit. They're exact match to the Activision games. So I think what happened is Activision ended up absorbing these companies, or maybe they had some deal where they were manufacturing for them. Who knows? This one, this Zonix Double Ender cartridge, has 2 games on it, one on each side. This one was not tested, so we'll find out what happens with this guy. And over here, I've got these CBS games, Solar Fox, which happens to be a great game on the 2600. This one is tested, and it works. These 3 are untested games. Now, these all have the same thing. They have RAM Plus. So I believe CBS was the first company to develop a bank switching routine with the 2600 to give it access to more memory than 4K of ROM. So these run a little bit higher. I don't know what the memory capacity of these games are, but we've got Tunnel Runner, Omega Race. This one says you're supposed to use the booster grip adapter. So it was like a button that would go on top of the joystick to give you two buttons. I don't know if there's any way to get around that without the booster grip. I don't know. I don't have it. And then Mountain King here is a RAM Plus game. So those will need testing when I get my 2600 Plus. All of these games were tested and work by 20th Century Fox. We've got MASH and Porky's and Deadly Duck. I want to play some Deadly Duck. I'm not exactly sure I've played that game yet, but it looks kind of cool, so we'll have to test that one out. And these Telesys, these games, or this one, it's the only one I got by Telesys, Fast Food, it works. It's tested, it works. And this game, Space Cavern, is an Apollo game. They kind of came out at the tail end of Atari, the video game Crash. I don't remember if this is a good game. I do remember playing it quite a bit. I just don't remember if it's a good game or not. So there's some other things I want to test, like what is, how good are the paddle games going to work? And also one that was tested and marked worked was Indy 500. Will Indy 500, it uses driving controllers. How are those going to work on the new Atari 2600 Plus? Also have, let's see, on the 7800 crossbow, will that work with a light gun? I think it works with a light gun on the standard 7800, but I'll have to try to test that as well. And then we've got like Star Raiders with the keypad. Is that going to work? It should. I would expect it would. And then also like Codebreaker used keypads. I'm not sure if the keypad for with Star Raiders will work with Codebreaker. I'm not sure if they're the same or different internally, but I want to play with those and see what happens. Another thing I'd like to look at is how well is a trackball controller going to work with some of these games. So there's a lot of fun things to do with the 2600 Plus when it comes out. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of the cartridge port, the interface where you can grab your cartridge and pop it in. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Although you can see when you have a collection like my collection here, you're probably not going to have all your cartridges out. There's some other neat things they came up with back in the day. They had these little expansions that you'd plug into your Atari, and then it would give you multiple cartridge ports, and you just push a button for which cartridge you wanted to play. I think they had like 6 games or something like that on them. I don't have one of those, but that would be kind of interesting to play with. So that's a look at my loose collection of 2600 and 7800 games. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and if you did and you haven't already done so, consider subscribing to my channel. It's absolutely free and it's going to help me out a bunch. I'm actually getting close to 1,000 subscribers, and it would be really, really exciting to reach that milestone. So with that, thank you very much. I appreciate your time watching my video, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care of yourself and goodbye.